Japanese people don't just eat differently at breakfast. They approach it with an intention that most Western morning routines never come close to matching. A cup of green tea that delivers calm, focused energy without the spike and crash that coffee alone produces. Steamed rice instead of processed bread, providing slow-release energy that carries throughout the entire morning. And a breakfast format so nutritionally complete that most Japanese people arrive at lunch still full and still focused, hours after eating. These aren't complicated meal plans or expensive dietary overhauls. They're simple habits so logical that once you understand why Japan eats this way, the Western breakfast starts to look like a problem nobody fixed. Today we're counting down 15 Japanese breakfast habits that just make sense. Watch until the end because number 15, eating until you're only 80% full, is the single habit that explains more about Japanese health and longevity than almost anything else on this list. Number 1, eating rice instead of bread. Most Western breakfasts are built around bread in some form. Toast, bagels, muffins, croissants. All of them are made from refined flour that digests rapidly, produces a quick spike in blood sugar, and leaves most people hungry again within 2 hours of eating. Japan builds breakfast around rice instead, and the difference in how the body responds is significant. Steamed white rice digests more slowly than refined bread, providing a steadier release of energy that sustains focus and fullness through the morning, rather than producing the mid-morning crash that sends most people toward a second coffee or an early snack. Brown rice extends that effect further, but even standard Japanese white rice has a lower glycemic impact than the equivalent amount of white bread, meaning the blood sugar response is more gradual and the subsequent drop is less severe. It's the same carbohydrate category, a completely different physiological outcome, and a swap so simple it requires no new cooking skill, no new equipment, and no change to anything else about the morning. Number 2, green tea instead of coffee. Coffee produces alertness through a straightforward mechanism. Caffeine blocks adenosine receptors in the brain, suppresses the feeling of tiredness, and delivers a sharp stimulation that peaks quickly and drops off in a way most regular coffee drinkers know well enough to schedule their second cup around. Green tea produces alertness differently. It contains caffeine but in lower quantities than coffee, and alongside an amino acid called L-theanine that modulates the stimulating effect. L-theanine promotes alpha wave activity in the brain, the same pattern associated with calm focus rather than anxious stimulation, which is why green tea produces an alert, clear-headed state without the edge that strong coffee creates. The combination also means the energy curve is flatter, the peak is lower, the drop is more gradual, and the need for a second cup arrives later and less urgently. Japan has consumed green tea at breakfast for centuries. The science explaining why it produces a better morning energy state than coffee arrived much later, but the outcome was already well understood. Number 3, Japanese Tamagoyaki rolled omelette. Eggs are one of the most complete breakfast foods available. They contain all 9 essential amino acids, choline for brain function, and enough protein per serving to sustain energy and fullness well into the morning. Most Western breakfasts include them in some form, which is one area where the nutritional logic already aligns with Japan. The difference is how Japan prepares them. A tamagoyaki is a rolled omelet cooked in a rectangular pan, built from multiple thin layers of seasoned egg rolled over each other progressively as each one sets. The result is a firm, layered log that slices into neat portions, fits cleanly into a bento or alongside a breakfast spread, and looks significantly more considered than a scrambled pile on a plate. The technique takes a few attempts to learn and under 3 minutes to execute once you have it. The nutritional content is identical to any other egg preparation, but the portion control, the presentation, and the clean eating format make it a more deliberate and satisfying way to start the day. If you're enjoying this so far, go ahead and tap like. It tells YouTube you want more of Japan's clever, everyday innovations. And if you love discovering things you didn't even know existed, hit subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this list. Trust me, the next ones are even smarter. Number 4, grilled fish for breakfast. The idea of eating fish for breakfast strikes most Western people as unusual until you consider what fish actually provides as a first meal of the day. Complete protein, omega-3 fatty acids, B vitamins, selenium, all of the nutrients that support brain function, sustained energy, and metabolic health, delivered in a form the body absorbs efficiently and without the inflammatory fats present in the processed breakfast meats. Most Western breakfasts substitute instead. Japan has eaten grilled fish at breakfast for centuries, and the stovetop fish grill built into almost every Japanese kitchen exists specifically because this habit is daily, rather than occasional. A small piece of mackerel, salmon, or other fatty fish goes under the grill while the rice cooks and the miso soup simmers. It's ready in the same time as everything else. The whole breakfast comes together simultaneously without any component requiring dedicated attention. It's a breakfast protein that outperforms almost every Western alternative nutritionally, prepared in roughly the same time it takes to fry an egg. Number 5. No sweet breakfast foods. A standard Western breakfast is frequently built around sugar in forms that don't always register as sweet. Flavored yogurt, fruit juice, granola. Cereal marketed as healthy with 20 grams of sugar per serving. Jam on toast. Even the supposedly savory options like flavored porridge or smoothies often contain more sugar than a dessert. Japan doesn't eat sweet food for breakfast. A traditional Japanese morning meal contains no added sugar. Rice is unseasoned. Fish is grilled with salt. Miso soup is savory. Pickles are fermented. Tofu is dressed with soy sauce. The entire breakfast operates in a savory flavor profile that produces no blood sugar spike, no subsequent crash, and no mid-morning hunger driven by the insulin response that a sweet breakfast consistently triggers. The absence of sweet food at breakfast isn't a restriction in Japanese culture. It's simply not how breakfast works. The meal is savory. The body responds to it differently, and the energy it provides lasts significantly longer as a direct result. Number 6. Natto fermented soybeans. Natto is the breakfast food that most non-Japanese people encounter once, react strongly to, and either never try again or become quietly obsessed with. The smell is pungent, the texture is sticky enough to pull into strings, the appearance is not immediately appetizing, and the nutritional profile is extraordinary enough that if natto looked and smelled like anything else, it would be marketed as a superfood everywhere in the world. Fermented soybeans contain complete protein, all 9 essential amino acids, vitamin K2 in concentrations higher than almost any other food source, and nattokinase, an enzyme with demonstrated cardiovascular benefits. The fermentation process also produces a probiotic culture that supports gut health directly. A single portion of natto at breakfast delivers more nutritional value than most Western breakfasts achieve across the entire meal. It's served over rice with a raw egg, soy sauce, and mustard, mixed together until the strings bind everything into a sticky, flavorful combination that Japanese people eat every morning without a second thought about how unusual it appears to everyone else. Number 7. Eating breakfast at the table. Breakfast eaten standing at a kitchen counter, walking to the car, or scrolling through a phone is breakfast consumed without any of the physiological conditions that make eating beneficial beyond the calories it provides. Digestion is significantly more efficient when the body is seated and relaxed. Eating while distracted or moving reduces the parasympathetic nervous system activity that stimulates digestive enzyme production, meaning the same food is processed less effectively when eaten on the go than when eaten at rest. Japan eats breakfast at the table. The meal is a dedicated activity, not a background task combined with something else. Phones stay down. The food receives attention. The meal takes the time it takes, rather than being compressed into whatever gap exists between waking up and leaving. The practical result is better digestion, natural portion regulation because the brain has time to receive fullness signals, and a calmer cortisol baseline entering the working day. It's a habit that costs nothing to adopt and changes the physiological experience of every meal it's applied to. Number 8. Miso soup as a morning staple. A bowl of miso soup at breakfast is so standard in Japanese households that its absence from a morning meal would feel as strange as skipping rice. It appears on breakfast tables across the country every single day, and the reasons it became a staple have as much to do with function as tradition. Miso is a fermented paste made from soybeans, salt, and a mold culture called koji. The fermentation produces live probiotic cultures that support gut health directly. Dissolved in a warm dashi broth with tofu, wakame seaweed, and spring onion, it becomes one of the most nutritionally dense things a person can consume before 8 a.m. The warmth of the broth raises core body temperature slightly, which stimulates the digestive system before solid food arrives. The sodium replaces what was lost overnight. The probiotics begin their work immediately. It takes 4 minutes to prepare. It requires almost no skill beyond dissolving paste into hot broth. And it delivers benefits that no equivalent Western breakfast drink or supplement comes close to replicating. Number 9. Eating breakfast at the same time every day. The body's hunger hormones, particularly ghrelin, operate on a schedule that adapts to consistent eating patterns over time. When breakfast happens at the same time every day, ghrelin rises predictably just before that time. The body is primed for food when it arrives, digestion is more efficient, and the hormonal cascade that follows a meal proceeds in a more regulated way than it does when eating times vary unpredictably from day to day. Japan eats breakfast at the same time every morning as a natural consequence of the broader cultural emphasis on fixed daily routines and punctuality. The benefit extends beyond digestion. A fixed breakfast time anchors the entire morning routine. Wake time stabilizes around it. The gap between breakfast and lunch becomes consistent, which regulates hunger through the day. Energy levels follow a more predictable pattern because the fuel input is arriving at the same point in the body's daily cycle rather than at a different time each morning. It's a habit that costs nothing and requires only consistency to produce a measurable effect on how the body functions through the day. Number 10. Tofu as a breakfast protein. Most Western breakfast proteins require cooking. Eggs need heat. Bacon needs a pan. Sausages take time. Even smoked salmon needs to be unwrapped and plated with enough accompaniments to justify its price. The result is a morning protein that adds time, effort, and washing up to a meal that most people are already trying to get through as efficiently as possible. Japan serves silken tofu at breakfast cold, straight from the package, with a small amount of soy sauce, a few drops of sesame oil, some grated ginger, and a scattering of spring onion on top. Preparation takes about 45 seconds. No cooking, no pan, no heat required. Silken tofu contains all 9 essential amino acids, making it a complete protein source equivalent in biological value to animal protein for this specific application. It's light enough not to feel heavy at breakfast, cooling in summer, and substantial enough to contribute meaningfully to the overall protein content of the meal without dominating it. Number 11. Dried seaweed as a side. Nori is one of those ingredients that most Western people have encountered, primarily as the wrapping on a sushi roll, without ever considering that it might be a standalone food worth eating deliberately rather than something that holds other food together. At a Japanese breakfast, sheets of toasted nori are served alongside the rice bowl as a side dish in their own right. You tear a small piece, place a portion of rice on it, fold it into a bite-sized parcel, and eat it. The nori provides a concentrated hit of umami, a slight oceanic saltiness, and a texture contrast that makes plain rice significantly more interesting without adding any preparation time to the meal. Nutritionally, nori is one of the most mineral-dense foods available in a standard diet. It contains iodine, which supports thyroid function, vitamin B12 in meaningful quantities, one of the very few plant sources that provides it, and a range of antioxidants and concentrations that make it genuinely worth eating, rather than merely incidental to the meal. Number 12. Tsukemono pickled vegetables. Every Japanese breakfast includes something fermented or pickled. Tsukemono are traditional Japanese pickled vegetables, prepared through salt pickling, rice bran fermentation, or vinegar curing, and served in a small portion alongside the main components of the meal. The flavor is sharp, sour, and intensely savory, a direct contrast to the mild, neutral flavors of rice and fish that forms the foundation of the breakfast. That contrast is part of the function. Strong flavors in small quantities stimulate saliva production and digestive enzyme activity, preparing the gut for the meal that follows. The fermented varieties also provide live cultures that add to the probiotic load of a breakfast that already includes miso soup, compounding the gut health benefits across multiple sources rather than relying on a single supplement or yogurt to do the work alone. Tsukemono are made at home in traditional households using fermentation crocks, bought ready-made from every convenience store and supermarket, and served at every restaurant that offers a Japanese breakfast set. Their presence at the morning meal is non-negotiable in Japanese food culture. Number 13. Small portion sizes. A standard Western breakfast plate is large. The portions are generous by default. The expectation is fullness, and the meal is considered successful if you leave the table satisfied in a way that feels close to uncomfortable. Japan approaches breakfast from the opposite direction. A Japanese breakfast consists of multiple small dishes served in individual bowls and plates, each one containing a modest portion of a single component: rice in one bowl, miso soup in another, a small piece of fish on a separate plate, a few pieces of tsukemono in a tiny dish, tofu in its own vessel. The total food volume across all dishes is equivalent to a single Western breakfast plate, but the way it's served changes how it's eaten. Each component receives individual attention. Eating slows down because there are multiple vessels to navigate. The variety of flavors across the dishes creates satisfaction faster than a single uniform plate does. The result is a breakfast that provides complete nutrition in controlled portions that leave the body fueled rather than burdened. Number 14. Dashi broth as a base. Instant stock cubes exist because making broth from scratch has a reputation for being time-consuming, technically demanding, and not worth the effort for everyday cooking. Japan proved that reputation wrong with dashi, a broth so simple it takes 5 minutes and produces a depth of flavor that no instant alternative replicates convincingly. Dashi is made from 2 ingredients: kombu, a dried kelp seaweed, and katsuobushi, dried and fermented bonito tuna flakes. You steep the kombu in cold water, bring it to just below a simmer. Remove it, add the bonito flakes, steep for 2 minutes, and strain. The result is a clear golden broth with a clean umami flavor that forms the base of the morning miso soup and any other broth-based component of the breakfast. The glutamates in kombu and the inosinate in bonito combine to produce a synergistic umami effect that is scientifically measurable and immediately perceptible. It's the flavor foundation of Japanese cuisine, made fresh every morning in millions of households, and it takes less time than making a cup of coffee. Number 15. Eating until 80% full. Harahachi-bu is a Confucian teaching adopted into Okinawan culture and practiced across Japan as a daily eating discipline. It translates roughly as eat until you are 8 parts full, and it addresses a physiological problem that affects every person who eats without paying attention to it. The brain's fullness signal lags behind the stomach's actual state by approximately 20 minutes. By the time most people feel full, they've already eaten past the point of genuine satiation. The discomfort that arrives shortly after finishing a large meal is the delayed signal arriving too late to prevent the overconsumption that caused it. Stopping at 80% full means stopping before the signal arrives, at the point where the body has received enough rather than the point where it announces it loudly. Okinawa, where this practice is most deeply embedded, has historically had one of the highest concentrations of centenarians in the world. Researchers studying the relationship between caloric intake, longevity, and metabolic health consistently point to Harahachi-bu as a contributing factor. It's an eating habit so simple it requires no dietary change, no food substitution, and no calorie counting. Just stopping slightly earlier than feels instinctive. If you want to see more amazing things Japan is doing better than the rest of the world, then like and subscribe. And make sure to watch the video on your end screen, it's packed with even more life-improving things.